It is with great pleasure that I am among you today for this webinar. My presentation will focus on how Mauritius is an ideal destination for property investment. Mauritius is a small island with big ambition and intent to create exciting development that nurture innovation while bolstering productive capacity and promoting inclusive growth. This young country, described as Blueprint for Heaven, offers a wealth of investment opportunities to investors. As you are aware, the island of Mauritius is located strategically in the Indian Ocean, midway between the developing continents of Asia and Africa and Australia. The island is a global nation home to a multi-ethnic and multicultural population, a carrefour of some of the oldest civilizations, namely India, Africa, and Europe. Mauritius at a glance. With a population of 1.3 million people, Mauritius has a sophisticated and highly successful free market economy, highly reliant on export. With a GDP per capita of 12,500 USD, the country has embarked on a bold series of reforms to further diversify the economic base, thus enabling the country to be more resilient to external shocks. In a nutshell, Mauritius can be regarded as a country with a low tax jurisdiction, with corporate and income corporate tax at 15% for both personal and corporate tax, business-friendly regulation, a stable democracy, a country that is pleasant to live in, with excellent telecommunication and good health and education facilities. It offers a safe, stable, and predictable environment, a great place to live with future-ready infrastructure, global connectivity, and world-class talent. The history and religion of Mauritius have created a mosaic of culture. English is the official language of Mauritius, but many people are also fluent in French. Why Mauritius? Today, the world is navigating through a global storm of unprecedented proportion due to the COVID-19 pandemic. The country is considered as a COVID-safe destination. Activities have started. The borders have been opened from the 1st of October to welcome tourists and investors. A new premium visa scheme to allow tourists, retirees, and eligible nomads to stay for a period of 1 year has been introduced. Mauritius is a diversified economy. In brief, I must say that Mauritius has several sectors from ICT, media, knowledge and tertiary education, manufacturing, light processing, textile, fashion, agro-industry, media and creative, and the smart cities. Today, Mauritius owns a highly valued brand image equity, which has been built over the past years. It has forged a solid reputation in terms of ethics, good, transparent governance, economic and political freedom. Mauritius offers an unparalleled case in the way we do business and support industries and businesses. Ranked at the 30th position in the World Bank Doing Business report, Mauritius is continuously improving its business environment. The country remains first in Africa. It is a consequence of several continuous improvement in the legislation of how to do business in Mauritius. In terms of the business environment, Mauritius has political stability, transparent regulatory system, and sound governance framework that underpin its economic resilience. With its convenient time zone, availability of high-caliber professionals in the field of banking, finance, law, accounting, well-developed infrastructure, with excellent telecommunication facilities, air access, Mauritius has become a preferred jurisdiction for investors looking to do business in Asia, in Africa, or other emerging markets. Mauritius is seen as a low-tax jurisdiction with a standard tax rate of 15%, both for personal and corporate income, no withholding tax on dividends, and no capital gain tax. The country takes advantage of its strategic position now to attract a number of visitors and investors. Tax advantages are important to investors. but non-tax benefits also are important. Income tax at 15%, with a number of activities benefiting from 8 years tax holidays. Example for innovative activities or smart cities are provided by government. There is no exchange control in Mauritius, and the principle of free movement of capital is acquired. It is therefore possible to send home funds invested, profits, capital gains, or dividend outside Mauritius without any restriction or particular formality. With respect to taxes, there are no taxes on dividends, capital gains. There are no wealth tax, no property tax, no inheritance taxes for direct descendants. The only real estate tax is due on purchase of an immovable property, which is levied at the rate of 5% on the purchase of property. The non-fiscal incentive include the absence of any exchange control, investment protection treaties that offer protection against the risk of nationalization, a reliable and sophisticated banking system, an educated workforce, and enabling regulatory framework that has helped Mauritius to achieve fundamental economic resilience. In terms of the judicial system, Mauritius is endowed with all the attributes and a secure judicial system where the Judicial Committee of the Privy Council is the highest court of appeal, and the Mauritius International Arbitration Center has certainly positioned itself as an investment hub in the African region. In terms of international relations, supplemented with business facilitation advantages, Mauritius also has a number of bilateral investment treaties, DTAs and IPPAs across Africa, a transparent and modern financial ecosystem, a robust legal framework, political and economic stability, thus making it natural gateway to the continent. The membership of Mauritius to regional trading blocs like the SADC and the COMESA further adds to its offering as a premier business and investment hub for Africa, giving immediate preferential and duty-free access to most of the frontier market of more than 425 million people. In the financial services and banking sector, Mauritius has advantage of positioning its financial center, and government has enacted several laws, activities, and licenses sought to target individual groups and high net worth individuals who wish to use Mauritius as a regional or global focal point for their investment. Regarding high net worth individual, our Overseas Family Office scheme caters for the domiciliation of assets and wealth of high net worth families in Mauritius. The scheme consists of single family office and multi-family offices with a prescribed minimum investable and liquid wealth base of USD 5 million for each family to be eligible. Furthermore, under the scheme, family officers benefit from a tax holiday of 5 years, and family members benefit from residency scheme as well as eligibility to acquire immovable properties. Mauritius is a prime tourist destination known to all. We have more than 1.4 million tourists coming to Mauritius, and the promotion of Mauritius as a tourist destination of note has already proved successful. Mauritius has a great deal to offer visitors, from retail excellence to entertainment extravagance, from stunning natural beauty to the architectural splendor. Several prestigious brands operate on the island. In terms of work and live in Mauritius, with the economic expansion of Mauritius, the Economic Development Board is promoting openness to foreign investors to attract professionals with talents, know-how, and retirees. Foreign nationals may opt to invest, work, live, or retire in Mauritius through various avenues, namely the occupation permit or a residence permit through acquisition of property under the different schemes, or through the Young Professional Scheme or the Permanent Residence Permit today, which is granted for a period of 20 years. The occupation permit, which is a combined work and residence permit, allows foreign nationals to work and reside in Mauritius under three specific categories, as an investor or a professional or self-employed. Foreign nationals above the age of 50 years may also choose to retire in Mauritius under a residence permit. And the occupation permit is granted for a period of 10 years to investors and self-employed and professionals for a maximum period of 10 years. It could be attached to the contract of employment. So someone having a contract of employment of 5 years will have an occupation permit for 5 years. Last week, Mauritius introduced a premium visa. So a non-citizen can come to Mauritius under a business visa, which today is for a maximum period of 120 days. Or someone can come under a tourist visa, which is for a maximum period of 180 days. If you want to come to Mauritius for a long stay, more than 6 months, you can apply for a premium visa. And the premium visa an application can be submitted online. You just need to go on the EDB website, edbmauritius.org, and submit your application. So if you are a tourist, you are a professional, you are a retiree or a digital nomad, or you have children studying in Mauritius or living in Mauritius, it's now time for you to apply for a premium visa to stay in Mauritius in a COVID-safe destination. The requirement for a premium visa are, firstly, you need to have an evidence of enough monthly income to sustain a living in Mauritius. Adults have to show that they have at least 1,500 USD, and a child 500 USD to be eligible to apply for a premium visa. You need to have an insurance cover for the initial period of stay and your travel ticket. As all visitors, a premium visa holder has to follow all health protocol imposed by the Ministry of Health in Mauritius, and you need to go for a 14-day quarantine period. As for accommodation, the holder can stay in a hotel or another accommodation. Children may also enroll in a private paid school. The holder of a premium visa cannot enter the Mauritian labor market. The main place of income should be outside Mauritius. And as a premium visa holder, you can also apply for an occupation permit or a residence permit as a retired non-citizen. And for that, as a retired non-citizen, you need to transfer 1,500 USD monthly, and you're provided with a residence permit for a period of 10 years. Today, Mauritius offers property developers and non-citizens a golden opportunity to invest in a well-established luxury property market. Foreigners may acquire real estate under several investment mechanisms approved by government, be it the integrated resort scheme, the property development scheme, the smart city scheme, where once you acquire property, you become freehold owner. And these projects, it's important to know that they are developed within world-class amenities and environment, golf course, marina, nautical, and other facilities, health centers, and all those residences are provided with day-to-day management services, security, maintenance, gardening, waste disposal, or household services. Several stunning projects are being developed on the island. So these projects can be acquired off-plan. You can use different legal structure, be a company, a trust, a foundation, or you can acquire under your own name. You can also acquire a property, a ground plus 2 unit in Mauritius. The minimum price should be at least USD 150,000 for you to be eligible to acquire these properties. In terms of duty, once you acquire a property, you have to pay registration duty of 5%, and you can also put your residential unit on rental. In terms of smart cities, several smart cities are being developed on the island. To benefit from residency, a non-citizen who has acquired a residential property under the different scheme, IOS or ESPDS or Smart City, is granted a residence permit for investment above 375,000 USD. And this residence permit is attached to the unit acquired. So the moment you sell your property, you also lose your residency. In terms of nationality of buyers, we can see that 1 out of 4 property investors are South African. To conclude, I may say that investment opportunities in Mauritius are many and diverse. Despite the global economic downturn, Mauritius has continued to attract sizable investment in the country. This demonstrates that the country has exhibited a fair level of resistance to acute external shocks, which highlights the general relevance of long-standing economic strategies and the effectiveness of the recent reform programs. All a result of the achievement in terms of new sector development, infrastructure bolstering, improvement of the business environment, and efficient macroeconomic management that have all helped to sustain economic growth while taking on seeing the global economic crisis. As I have just hinted, Mauritius is a country where the right conditions are in place for the conduct of business, for investing, for working and enjoying a high quality of life. The Economic Development Board, we operate under the Ministry of Finance and Economic Development. We are here to help investors. We are a government agency to promote investment and a development agency to facilitate export. We are well placed to assist your investment decision-making process and help you set up your activities in Mauritius. Thank you.
Sachin, thank you very much. It was a very comprehensive and a very good presentation, giving an overview of Mauritius and what the advantages are. Our next speaker is Keelan van der Walt, who is based in Mauritius and an international tax partner at Regan van Roy. Keelan's going to tackle some of the practical issues and advantages of structuring an international company from Mauritius. And when she's finished, I'll say a few words about banking. So Keelan, I'll pass the reins over to you.
Thank you, Colin, and thank you, Sachin. I enjoyed your presentation and I liked your description of Mauritius as a small island with big ambitions. I think that's very true. I'm from Ireland, which is also a small island with big ambitions, and many of you will know that the Mauritian financial services regime is actually based on the Irish regime. So I am with an international tax and structuring firm called Regan van Roy, and we specialize in corporate structuring and individual structuring, but today we're going to talk more about the business side. Our main offices are in South Africa, and we set up in Mauritius 2 years ago now because we firmly believe that for a structuring firm that focuses on Africa, that Mauritius is the most relevant jurisdiction in terms of a holding company or support country jurisdiction for businesses going into Africa. So today I want to explore basically the question, is Mauritius still relevant for tax structuring, and look at what makes a good structure and how the particular specifics of Mauritius can make it important in terms of structuring for Africa. So first of all, what do we mean by structure? We basically talk about how we hold corporate entities in a group, or in the individual side, how we hold our individual assets, and also how we structure the transactions between our entities. Why is structure important? So what do we look at when we try to identify the optimal structure for a group? Well, a good structure can reduce shareholder liability, can mitigate any specific country risk. It can enable us to work in whatever currencies we want. A good structure will enable us to mitigate various exchange control restrictions. A good structure is a way to protect and develop and enhance our intellectual property. It can help us with fundraising or capital raising. A good structure can also optimize taxes on all levels within the business, including taxes back to ultimate shareholders. And with a good structure, we can ensure that we can sell the business or sell IP within the business with a minimal exit or capital gain tax. Now, when we're looking at structure for Africa, there are some additional specific risk areas that are worth considering. And anyone who's doing business in Africa will be well aware of these. The first is that if you're operating in Africa, you're likely working with multiple volatile currencies. You're also operating with restrictive exchange controls. And often worse than that, there can be, in many African countries, shortages in foreign currencies. So many businesses operating in Africa have a situation where they have profits, they have exchange control approval to repatriate the profits, but there is simply not enough hard currency in country to actually make the payment. Africa is also famous for having high withholding taxes, as well as having high corporate tax regimes in the entire continent. African tax authorities are getting more aggressive, particularly in terms of transfer pricing on connected party payments. There is also in many African countries, and I exclude South Africa and Mauritius from my comments on general African tax issues, but in many African countries there is a dearth of clear tax law or tax precedent, and many countries do not have a lot of double taxation agreements, which can make transactions more complex. Generally, these specific risks and challenges which are exacerbated in the African environment can be mitigated by holding or performing support functions via a suitable, friendly jurisdiction, and Mauritius often ticks the box for many of these reasons. And we look on the next slide at, does Mauritius still make sense? So many of the pros of Mauritius have been explained very clearly by Sachin, so we'll just go through these quickly. Firstly, in Mauritius, unlike in South Africa or almost any country on the African continent, we can operate and report in any currency and there are no exchange controls. There's a very strong banking infrastructure. There's also a good network of double taxation agreements. Mauritius currently has 46 agreements in place, plus an additional 4 being ratified and 15 more currently under negotiation, which is very high. Not as high as South Africa, but up there. And double taxation agreements are critical when we look at cross-border transactions because they really facilitate cross-border trade between different nations, particularly in the African context. Furthermore, Mauritius is no longer regarded as a harmful tax regime by the EU or the OECD. Mauritius was taken off the so-called grey list of harmful tax regimes in late 2019. And also Mauritius has no withholding taxes on dividends, as Sachin mentioned, and low or no other withholding tax on other payments out. Some of the negatives about Mauritius, or some changes that have been touted as negatives, which I want us to unpack here, are related to the significant changes in 2018 to the Mauritian tax regime, which were largely brought in because of pressure from the EU and the OECD. So in 2018, it was announced that the deemed tax credit would be abolished. This was the old regime under which any GBC2 would get a deemed foreign tax credit for 80% of their tax, which meant they had an effective 3% tax rate. That has now been abolished with effect from June next year. And the GBC2 regime has now been abolished. The GBC2 type company was a very specific company that was half tax resident and half not tax resident in Mauritius and was deemed to be a harmful tax regime by the EU, and therefore as part of its efforts to keep the EU and the OECD, keep on the right side of the EU and the OECD, Mauritius abolished both of those. Mauritius also brought in substance rules and control foreign company rules last year, and also due to pressure from the EU and OECD. Now, the substance rules are not very onerous, and they essentially require that the core income generating activities happen in or from Mauritius, and that the relevant company incurs an appropriate level of expenditure and has appropriate staff, which can be employed directly or, for instance, via a management company and thus indirectly. Mauritius also was required to bring in control foreign company rules, but these are not rules that would have adverse implications in 99% of the cases. They have a very limited application. The other negatives, so those tax negatives we'll unpack in the next few slides, actually are not as bad as one might think, and we believe that Mauritius is still a very favourable jurisdiction from the tax side. However, the one definite problem we do have is Mauritius being on the EU Commission blacklist for financial centres. This happened in May this year. It was quite a surprise, particularly as Mauritius had already made great strides to address various weaknesses identified previously. But the EU put us on the list without prior notice. Mauritius is making an effort to do what is needed to get off the list, and we hope to see that happen next year. In general, it should not adversely impact businesses wanting to operate in Africa, but it can cause problems where we have funding wanting to come from the EU to Mauritius. So far with our clients, we haven't seen it cause significant problems, but it is something that is creating some kind of reputational concern for Mauritius, and everyone involved is doing their best to ensure that Mauritius is off the list by next year. So with all of those negatives, does Mauritius still make sense? And particularly in terms of these tax changes, is Mauritius still a tax favorable jurisdiction? So the Mauritian tax regime post-grandfathering, and by that I mean when the deemed credit and the GBC2 regime come to an end in June 21, means that Mauritius is nominally a 15% tax rate country, but there are a number of exemptions or reliefs that can apply. The first one is the partial exemption regime. The second one is the many and varied and very generous tax holidays that apply in Mauritius, either for 5 or 8 years to specific types of activity. And the third is the foreign tax credit regime, or the foreign tax relief system. And we'll go through those in a bit of detail. Many of these are quite complex, but the main point we want to make is that most businesses who are operating in Africa and have a presence in Mauritius should be able to avail of one of these exemptions to maintain a low effective tax rate. And we see that the new regime in Mauritius allows businesses operating in Africa further opportunities to actually increase what they're doing in Mauritius for the benefit of the entire group. And as we say here, now is the time to determine which relief applies. So if you currently have a GBC2, you're going to have to change that from next June. GBC2s are no longer allowed to exist. And if you currently have a GBC1, which was a pre-2017 entity, the 15% rate will apply to that from next June unless you do something. So now is the time to figure out which relief applies, or to restructure your entities or your transactions between entities to ensure that you can avail of one of the beneficial regimes. In terms of the partial exemption regime, 80% of specific income streams are deemed to be exempt, which, similar to the deemed credit, gives us a 3% effective rate. Now, this isn't as broad as some people think. So it will apply in certain cases, but we do not see this as the most exciting of the 3 possible beneficial regimes going forward. So it applies on foreign source dividends, on interest income, either local or foreign, profits of a foreign permanent establishment, which is unlikely to happen if your company is structured right in the first place, and certain financial services, in particular collective investment schemes, investment advisor, asset management. Also then it applies to some very specific activities such as ship and aircraft leasing, reinsurance and reinsurance broking, international fiber operations, and asset management to do with aircraft. Now, the tax holidays are quite exciting, and we are particularly interested in the first few on the left-hand side, which often apply where there is a group operating in Africa who wants to have support functions, or for instance, treasury functions in Mauritius, which often makes sense to mitigate some of the African tax risks we spoke about in terms of currency, exchange control, withholding taxes, and those other African challenges. So each of these apply for either 5 or 8 years. The ones on the right are very specific, so you'll know if you're in this business: marina development, inland aquaculture, industrial fishing, using ocean water for air conditioning, obviously very, very specific types of industry. Tertiary education, nutraceutical and pharmaceutical products, food processing, certain types of sheltered farming, and automotive parts. And on the left-hand side of the chart are more general functions that could, even if they don't necessarily strike you as being applicable, it is something that is worth considering in terms of optimizing your current operations or transactions to consider fitting within one of these tax holidays. The first one, which we talk about on the next slide, is the Global Headquarter Administration regime, and this Global Treasury or Legal Advisory Services. overseas family office. As Sachin mentioned, there's two licenses for single family offices and multi-family offices, which offer a very favourable regime in Mauritius. There's also specific holidays to do with investment over 25 million by a non-citizen. There are tax holidays around R&D type activities, which are quite specific and don't relate to brand or logo, so might not be as broad as other countries' R&D systems. And then there's another specific one on infrastructure in special economic zones, and then on peer-to-peer lending, which is a growing service around Africa, and there's opportunity for South African businesses in peer-to-peer lending to move to Mauritius and avail of that tax holiday in terms of running it for the African continent, and similarly for e-commerce platform. So in terms of the global headquarter administration regime, and this was first introduced in 2016, so it's been around for a while, and it is aimed at attracting multinationals to set up a Mauritian company to run their head office or support functions in Mauritius. So it applies if a company performs at least 3 of the following activities for at least 3 related companies. The companies do not have to be owned by the Mauritian entity, but part of the same group. And you'll see that many of these activities are quite broad. So you could imagine that in a group context, if you have operations around Africa, a lot of these functions would need to be performed. So the first one is administration and general management, obviously quite broad. Business planning, business development, business coordination, economic or investment research and analysis, or other services relating to international corporate headquarters, so very broad, or group treasury. So if the company performs at least 3 of these activities and has at least 3 companies in its group, then it can avail of a tax holiday where it is exempt from all corporate tax for a period of 8 years. Now, this is well worth considering for any business that is operating around Africa. And that's our last bullet in the bottom in bold. Multinationals should in any event be considering doing these type of activities from Mauritius, because it is generally a good way to improve your overall tax position, as well as mitigate your exchange control and foreign currency risks in Africa, and of course to meet the enhanced Mauritian substance requirements, and more importantly, the substance requirements from, for instance, the South African controlled foreign company residence or transfer pricing requirements. The R&D tax holiday, I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this. It's quite specific, so it's not as broad as many other countries' tax regimes. But again, it's an 8-year tax holiday, and it's in respect of innovation-driven income linked to research and development activities, which is conducted in Mauritius that lead to the creation of IP, and in specific patent or copyrighted software or any other IP that is patentable. The next one is the foreign tax credit regime, and this also is something that we're quite excited about, because where we have a business operating in multiple African countries, the reality is they're going to be paying high tax in African countries, and they're most likely going to be paying high withholding tax, even if there is a double taxation agreement in place. And Mauritius enables you to claim foreign tax relief in respect of the foreign tax suffered in terms of withholding tax, and also the underlying corporate tax suffered in terms of dividends. So 9 times out of 10, if you've got operations in Africa and you have got payments flowing from them to Mauritius, even if you don't have a tax holiday, you will end up having a low effective tax rate in Mauritius because of the foreign tax credit regime. So foreign tax credits, as most of you would know, are granted as a deduction against tax payable in respect of foreign income received, and they apply typically on foreign dividends, foreign interest income, foreign royalties, but also on foreign service fees, which often is relevant when we have, for instance, a Mauritian support function or a Mauritian company doing, let's say, procurement for the group. In Mauritius, you can choose either the partial exemption, which is the effective 3%, or the double taxation credits, but not both. And that makes sense. And generally, the foreign tax credit regime will be more beneficial than the partial exemption regime, which is why up front we said that is not a relief that we're too excited about. We don't see too much application in terms of partial exemption. For foreign dividends, as I said at the beginning, double tax relief is also available in respect of the underlying tax suffered on the profits out of which a dividend is paid. So in Africa, where we have an average 30% corporate tax rate and an average 10% withholding tax rate on dividends, this means that we can generate a lot of foreign tax relief in Mauritius that can then be used to shelter other foreign source income, such as service fees, which goes back to the opportunities for optimizing the activities that are carried on in Mauritius to mitigate against the other non-tax risks in the African continent. This underlying tax relief also applies to tax suffered indirectly. So even when a dividend is paid and undeclared, so if you've got a Mauritian company earning dividends from, let's say, a South African company, which earns dividends from a Botswana company, you can claim the underlying tax credit in terms of the South African tax and the Botswana tax. Further, excess double tax credits can be offset against tax on other foreign income streams in the same year. The one thing to be aware of is that excess credits cannot be carried forward. So in our view, this means that an important question for businesses who are operating in Mauritius is there an opportunity to match foreign dividend receipts to taxable Mauritian income? Because if there is, that will give you likely a 0% effective tax rate in Mauritius, while being subject to a headline 15% tax rate, which can be a nice supportive narrative in terms of your overall group tax position. Nobody likes to, nowadays, the reputational issues about being subject to a 0% tax can be difficult, but where you're subject to a 0% headline tax, a 15% headline tax and a 0% effective tax, it can be quite a nice story to tell. And that is it. So that essentially the main message we wanted to give today is that even though there have been a lot of significant changes to the Mauritian tax regime, they are not to put people off Mauritius. And particularly if you have a business that is operating in Africa, we believe that a low effective tax rate can be maintained going forward.
Keelan, thanks. Thank you very much for a very thorough and interesting presentation. If I could just say to our guests, we're running a bit over time, and hopefully you can squeeze another 10 or so minutes into your calendar. We were scheduled to stop at 1:45, but I think we're going to be running over that. So we will be running over that. So I'm just going to quickly deal with the Mauritian banking sector. And I'm going to start with an overview of the Mauritius banking sector. So it comprises 19 banks, of which 9 are foreign-owned, 4 banks are local, of which Fraser is one. The total assets in the banking sector are 43.8 billion rand, and sorry, I just need to get something up here. Total assets are 43.8 billion rand, of which 2/3 of the deposits held in Mauritius are by non-residents and global business companies. So it underlies the fact that Mauritius truly is an international financial center. There are no restrictions to opening accounts in various currencies. In fact, in Fraser, we open accounts in 28 different countries and facilitate outward payments in 125. As a core principle in any jurisdiction, flows are subject to scrutiny for anti-money laundering, but there are no regulatory restrictions on capital flows, and as Session has pointed out before, no foreign exchange controls. The next slide answers 2 important questions that anyone should be asking their bank before entering into a relationship. Who are you accountable to, and who are your shareholders? So Fraser is licensed and regulated by the Central Bank of Mauritius, the Financial Services Commission of Mauritius, which is the equivalent of the South African FSCA, as well as the South African Reserve Bank. The shareholders include the 3 largest shareholders are IBL, which is listed on the stock exchange in Mauritius and is the largest conglomerate on the island by revenue. The National Bank of Canada, alongside a 161-year-old bank listed on the Toronto Stock Exchange and rated A+ by Fitch and A by Standard & Poor's. And the third largest shareholder is Singapore Impact Fund by the name of Intra-Asia Capital. So where are we? We're headquartered in the Mauritius International Financial Centre with offices in Port Louis and Eben. But more importantly for South Africans, we have a representative office based in Sandton with 5 banking professionals here addressing the core pillars of Fraser's offering, being corporate and private banking, global business banking, as well as treasury and markets. I'd like to spend a moment before I deal with this slide, just dealing with some terminology which may be unfamiliar to South Africans. In Mauritius, international companies, be they trading, holding, treasury, funds, whatever, are invariably held in a vehicle known as a global business license company. Now, establishing a global business license company is executed by an international management company, a so-called IMC. And there are many IMCs on the island. And as you can see, we have relationships with 143 of them, all licensed and regulated. So they not only perform the work necessary to establish a global business license company, but work with shareholders and management afterwards in terms of administration. A few other interesting facts I'd like to highlight about Fraser is that we have clients from over 160 countries across the world. Clients from over 60 countries use our safe custody platform. We have, you see on the right there, $3.8 billion in deposits and a further $1.1 billion in assets under administration. I think as far as solid growth is concerned, I'd just like to point out we recently released our latest results. And even during the COVID crisis, when caution and selective business were top priorities, we still managed a creditable growth in operating income of 3%, while our deposits grew by 15% over the same period. What do we do? Well, let me start. There's a wheel that on which you can see how the various products and services offered by Fraser. I'll start in the at 2 o'clock there with global business banking. We also offer treasury and financial markets. Beneath that is wealth management. And I think it's appropriate that wealth management is at 5 o'clock on the wheel because, as we know, 5 o'clock is cocktail time. Custody and external asset management is another service that is offered by Fraser. Private and personal banking, and then corporate banking as well. Who are our clients? Our clients range from some subsidiaries of some of the largest listed companies in the world right through to SMEs. We also bank trusts, foundations, high net worth individuals on the financial institution side, asset managers, as well as various funds, be they private equity, sovereign, hedge funds, as well as global custodians. I think in the interest of time, I'm going to skip this slide. It's just a broad stroke. What happens when you want to establish a GBC, but I can certainly come back to it or discuss it with anybody who's interested after the event. In terms of what you can expect from a Fraser Bank, if you're banking with us, on the left-hand column there, you will see international remittances and deposits facilitated by the Humble Current Account and our leading network of major correspondent banks worldwide. Those remittances also include customized payment solutions such as bulk payments. All of our banking is internet-based. It's free, secure. It has full corporate modalities, including division of duties. There are SWIFT copies and credit cards for directors. In the middle column, just highlight, as I said before, you can open accounts in multiple currencies. We have foreign exchange hedging and money market. And then on the right-hand column, other services that we offer include trade finance, guarantees, escrow, as well as corporate lending. So that is what we do, and what's our track record been like? What do others think of us? And I think here I'd just like to highlight some of the accolades that the bank has received over. I've just chosen the past few years. As you can see there, Best Corporate Bank in Mauritius, awarded to us by Bank Africa. 3 years in a row, the best bank in Mauritius. Best annual reporting from PwC, and more recently this year, Global Private Banking Awards gave us the best private bank in Mauritius, and again, best annual reporting from PwC. So that, in a nutshell, is banking in Mauritius and a Fraser Bank. And I would invite anybody to please contact us at our offices here in Sandton, and come in and see us. We don't charge, we don't bite, we have great coffee. And if you're still COVID squeamish, we can set up meetings via Zooms or Teams. So I think with that, I will move straight into questions. So just looking on my right-hand side here, I see there was a question. Keelan, probably you would like to deal with this because as you mentioned it. What are the implications of the EU blacklisting for business?
Yeah, so I always joke that my most common answer to any question is it depends. And here it depends. If you have a business that is operating only in Africa, so I'm sure many of our listeners today are South African based with perhaps a subsidiary in Mauritius or thinking of having a subsidiary in Mauritius and operating across Africa, the reality is it won't impact you at all. However, if you have operations in Mauritius or wish to have operations in Mauritius and need to get funding from the EU, it might impact you, particularly if it's government funding, that may be blocked. There have been some EU banks who have raised flags with basically increased due diligence for transactions to Mauritius and therefore have decided not to transact with Mauritius. But that has happened in our experience very rarely. And again, it's only relevant if you are going to be expecting significant flows from Europe into your Mauritian entity.
Thank you. I see a question there. My presentation has emphasized the corporate side. Do you also bank high net worth individuals from South Africa? Yes, absolutely we do. We can, in the same fashion that we open bank accounts for the corporate sector, we can bank high net worth individuals and offer them the services, products and services of the bank. Thank you for that question. Keelan, I have a question. You mentioned for a multinational looking to establish a regional headquarters. Mauritius makes a lot of sense because there's a tax holiday. If their regional headquarter company in Mauritius performs one of three of several tasks, for instance, administration, but that was enacted in 2016. What happened to the companies who were in business doing that in Mauritius prior to 2016?
Yes, so the regime has been there for a few years and not that many companies have actually applied for the tax holiday. So even if you were registered before 2016, you can still apply for the holiday. It's just that the specific license was issued in 2016. And with the license, once that's approved, comes the holiday.
Okay, there was a question about exchange of information between Mauritius and the tax authorities, and I think I should just emphasize that it's not between Mauritius and South Africa only. This is a global regime where every country, all the OECD countries, are required to share the financial information of residents of a particular country with the tax authorities in that country. So, for example, in Britain, in the UK, they would have to share information about French nationals or Belgians or South Africans or Nigerians or you name it, Australians. And similarly, Australia would be required to share information about anybody banking there who's from New Zealand or Kenya or wherever. It's a completely global regime that's been in place, that's been running now for 2 years. So it's not just South Africa SA setup. It's a global disclosure program between all OECD countries.
Colin, I think you've gone on mute.
Okay, sorry. Yes, we will share the presentations after the address. It will be shared on social media. Trying to see here.
There's a question about the loop structures, because as you know, and it's a very live issue for us South Africans, the archaic prohibition of a loop structure, which is whereby you have a South African person holding a non-South African entity which invests back in South Africa, or indeed the common monetary area, was prohibited. As you know, a few weeks ago, this prohibition was lifted with effect from next January. So it gives an additional opportunity for South Africans to bring Mauritius into their structure in a way that previously had been prohibited. We sent out a newsletter on this recently, actually, and we called it "The Loop is Dead, Long Live the Loop." Because the reality is, although from an exchange control perspective, you can still do a loop, a lot of what people tried, the kind of tricks they used to want to avail of through the loop have now been shut down by additional tax provisions. So there is opportunity in terms of structuring, not so much in terms of specific tax benefits on funding flows, but it is worth considering Mauritius also now as a structuring jurisdiction for your South African assets, which was previously not permitted.
Thanks, Keelan. Thank you very much to everyone for attending. We've run 10 minutes over time, and I think it's time that we close this webinar. Thank you for staying with us. Those who've stayed with us, thank you very much. I hope you found this a very informative presentation, and we look forward to interacting with you in the future. You will have all our contact details, and our presentations will be shared. So thank you very much indeed. We will end the webinar here.